Well, this may be a little bit sensitive. My parents modeled very constructive disagreement. I'm thinking of dinner conversations. We had one dad who was a Republican and one mom who was Democrat, and they
Mm,
disagreed on all kinds of things, but
mm.
always very civilly.
And it's making me feel so good right now, Bill, because my husband and I just had a major argument with both of the boys present. Welcome to the Lead.Teach.Parent podcast, where you will hear powerful leaders, teachers, and parents break down critical moments that define how they lead today. With your critical moments, dear listener, you can boost your productivity, strengthen your relationships, and grow financially while empowering the generation you lead to do the same. I'm known as Mother Gopi Gita. I'm an educational consultant for an international society and an executive coach for school and corporate leaders. Lead.Teach.Parent.com. Do share, share, share. We can revolutionize a future together. Hi, everyone. Today we have a really exciting guest all the way from Wisconsin, and his name is Bill Dunnington. He has been consulting leaders like you, my dear listeners, for 35 years, and he's been the owner and manager of his own company for 20 years. He's a husband, a dad, a granddad, a sailor, a skier, and a woodworker. And so thank you so much, Bill, for agreeing to be here with us. I can't wait to get some of your wisdom. I've already heard a few juicy bits that I would love to share with our audience.
First of all, thank you for asking me to join you. I'm honored. In 35 years, I've rubbed shoulders with lots of companies, some that people might recognize would be ER Squibb before the Bristol Myers merger, Mobil Oil before the Exxon merger. Recently, I've found myself working with three women CEOs, one whose business was about providing corporate lactation services, so working mothers could go back and nurse their kids on the job. A woman who started a high-end recruiting firm and is placing people on executive boards at the Gates Foundation and Kellogg and so on and so forth. So, and most recently, just let me toss this one in, a
Yeah.
nonprofit, a pro bono piece of work with my best friends growing up who have an outfit called Hockey Sans Frontières,
Mm,
wherein they take players who want to stay in the game but they don't want to play. They place them as coaches in countries overseas where they have an experience like it's kind of like the Peace Corps on a
mm.
hockey rink. So you end
Wow.
up in a country where you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you get put up with a
Wow.
family. And so I've had a fairly wide range of experiences.
Thank you, Bill. That's quite a long list there. I've just been feeling really grateful that you decided to be here. And before we start, we're going to share a little bit of mantra. I do this for every podcast. The purpose for me is to make mantra as common as yoga. It's bringing out the sound and the purpose in our voice as to who am I and what am I here for and why am I doing all this work that I'm doing. Mantras are Sanskrit affirmations. So we'll say the affirmation that's coming to me today in your space. I am deeply connected to being a support to others. I am deeply connected to knowing what those I guide need. I am deeply connected to my own needs. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. So you had mentioned earlier in a call we had that you are an other-directed individual. I had never heard that term before. Like it really went deep into my heart. I'm curious as to how this theme of being an other-directed individual has served you in all of your leadership positions with 35 years of supporting and guiding leaders.
Well, for me, it's been a pretty pervasive theme. I am a child of the 60s, if you will, the human potential movement. And I think that's where it originated. It's not about me, it's about who I'm working with. What are their needs, expectations, and priorities? And how do you map to those and help those develop? And so to get there, it's not so much important for me to leave my imprint, although I'm happy to share what I know and what I've learned. But it is important that at the end of the day, the people on the other side of the table or the chair or in the task collaborating have a way to join and feel confident and capable of helping and being useful.
Yeah, it's like you speak from a servant's heart. Like I hear this mood of service. And I love what you said about needs. The entire leadership parenting process is built on three core needs: the needs of connection, the needs of agency, and the needs of achievement. Your daughter, Alexa, she is a leader of children, of teachers, of an entire school. You clearly have not just embodied this yourself, but being an educator myself, I know how crazy it is, how hard the work is. The work is hard. It's long hours. You not only have embodied this, but you've transferred this to your daughter, this mood of service, this, yeah, I just wanted to appreciate you for that.
Well, thank you. Let me just sort of piggyback on that for a moment, if I might. I'm actually very fortunate to have three daughters.
Oh,
Um,
yay.
Alexa is the oldest, Gwen is the middle, and Kira is the youngest. So we have an assistant principal, a neonatal nurse,
Oh,
and a business analyst, a research analyst. And somehow they all seem to have come from the same parents, but they're all very different.
mm,
And I'm really very lucky. They all seem to have found themselves. They've found great partners. They're doing a wonderful job as parents.
mm,
Um, I they all have good jobs. I mean, I'm just very lucky. So
mm,
somehow we managed to navigate all of that. And life will throw some knocks at them at some point, but I
mm,
have every confidence they'll know what to do, that they
mm,
know right from wrong,
mm.
and they'll do the right thing.
Yeah, it's like you've imparted this service and business leadership, and with all of their roles and all the work that they're doing in the world, you've transferred that over to them. Bill, I'm curious about in your leadership experience, like, 35 years is no small task. And to keep going, to keep serving, to keep maintaining and supporting a family in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, what have been your like you can either share the biggest challenge you faced at work or that you overcame, or the biggest, you would say, win or success, like a moment in time, a memory that pops up for you at work as you're, supporting leaders.
Well, I'll briefly do one of each if that's okay.
Yeah.
When I was working with Mobil Oil, it was right after Valdez, and they did not want to have another Valdez. They commissioned a team to create an environmental health and safety management system for them. And I was working with them on quality management stuff, and the two disciplines welded together nicely. And I ended up facilitating a team of 9 refinery managers. And we created this environmental health and safety management system, put it in place. We cut paid lost time accidents almost 98% in 6 months. We cut the cost of compliance very substantially, environmental compliance, and it ended up being benchmarked for ISO 14001. So I feel like with them, we created something that has a life and has served lots of others. So I think of that as a real success. Um, the other side, and some of those as well, I was hired to help a woman who'd started a recruiting firm, who had also just hired some new partners to expand her strategy, her strategic offerings. And after 6 months, they couldn't agree on what they were going to do. And I was brought in to help mediate that conflict and sort of land on a course of action. Well, in the course of talking with them and getting to know each of them pretty well, I discovered that what the new partners really wanted to do is take over the company and
Oh my
oust her.
goodness. Oh
So
my goodness.
now we have a huge values conflict, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a set of very difficult conversations. Um,
I can
so,
only imagine.
and so to me, uh, values conflicts are really a challenge.
Mm. Yeah, because the whole purpose of the different partners entering the meeting is different, isn't it? In conflict resolution, you try and narrow down like the core, like common purpose. But here
Well,
you've got opposing.
you find something that there's common clarity and agreement on, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
that isn't there, that's a challenge. So
Did you find that you were able to come to an agreement, or was it just a we're going to agree to disagree and go our own ways?
she ended up buying them out, and they left.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, sometimes it ends up like that. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Definitely, I can imagine those conversations are in your, deep in your subconscious, the memory of
Yep.
those
Yep.
conversations.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, the polarity that was created at that time.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm hearing like the thread of transitions in all of the different stories that you've shared, your success, your personal successes.
Yeah, you could say I've spent my career paddling in a pond called change. Change.
Oh, oh.
And I would imagine, my guess is that as we speak, our listeners are dealing with AI and the
Mm.
changes it's bringing and will bring, some of which we know, much of which we don't know yet.
Yes.
It's just new territory.
Yes, I'm also in a space of change, but I find myself in a space of change pretty regularly.
Yeah,
I love
well,
I love there's a
yeah.
part of me that loves change, but interesting, what would be your like solid like tip advice to someone who's navigating these kinds of changes?
There's a couple of really core questions. One is, what do you want?
Yeah.
Second is, what are you willing to do?
Mm. What are you willing to
What are you
do?
willing to
Such
do?
a strong question, isn't it? Because we
Well, it's
have all
kind
the
of crisp.
desires, but
It's not simple usually. It's kind of
yeah,
crisp.
yeah.
And the third is, what's the right thing? What's the right
Mm.
thing? And, so by what standards do you judge that? And on what basis do you decide what course of action will leave you at peace with yourself over time?
Mm. So again, it brings back to that core connection internally, like really listening to that inner voice, that inner being, just, whether you're religious or not religious, source, connection. Yeah.
All of the stuff in leadership these days is about starting with yourself from the inside out.
Yes. Being really in touch with through change, because change feels like, and maybe this is just me, but it feels like it could be construed more as a negative thing than a positive thing. The transitions are scary. Your world shakes up. It's all uncomfortable and it's new and unknown. And so being really deeply rooted in your purpose as to why this is happening, why do you want this to happen, or even why are you not liking it, and really hearing yourself and reflecting, like, taking that
Yep,
time to process that.
absolutely. Yep. So
Yeah.
true.
On this theme of change, um, I'd love to hear about your parenting journey. Um, were there any significant changes as you were a parent that you had to navigate?
Well, let's see. I all three daughters played soccer growing
Mm,
up.
mm.
So the
Both of my
experience,
boys played soccer, so I love that. Yeah.
so the experience of team sports I think was very useful. There are a lot of life lessons that you learn in team sports, how to compete for your spot, how to
Mm,
cooperate as a team member,
mm,
uh, how to deal with wins and losses gracefully. I mean, there's lots of important lessons there.
yeah. Mm,
I think exposing them to music has been useful also. Music is its own delight.
mm,
And then, of course, with 3 daughters, they were boys. We had to
mm,
deal with boys. And fortunately, they seemed to make pretty good choices. I mean, I wasn't always fully comfortable, but they made pretty good choices and it all worked
mm,
out.
mm,
Um, and I'm very grateful for that, I must say.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I can think of instances where the clock was past when they were supposed to be home,
Oh, yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Uh, they'd gone to places where I knew there were drugs and alcohol and just hoping that they had the good sense not to imbibe.
Yeah.
I remember having conversations with them about dealing with other kids they knew in school who were being bullies
Mm,
to still other kids. So I mean, there are lots of places where you
mm,
have to weigh in, listen hard, have a lot of empathy,
mm,
and be willing to suggest some things to try if they
mm,
don't fall out of the mouth of babes, if you will.
mm. Getting a feeling from you as you're talking about these challenges that you faced as a dad. And I remember our earlier conversation, like I get this sense from you of like tranquility, like even in the chaos. And maybe it's also the lake in your background there.
Might be the lake.
But when I think of you, Bill, I think of rolling meadows and peace. So what I'm getting from you right now as you talk about these challenges is someone who is connected internally, spiritually.
Well, this may be a little bit sensitive, but I was very fortunate. My parents modeled very constructive disagreement. I'm thinking of dinner conversations. We had one dad who was a Republican and one mom who was Democrat,
Oh,
and they
wow.
knew how to talk with each other. And they
Mm,
disagreed on all kinds of things, but
mm,
always very civilly and cogently. And my brother and I watched that and learned from it.
mm,
And I now observe people all over the place whose families have been torn apart by politics and the partisanship that's replete in our country right now.
mm,
And if only that set of insights about listening carefully, understanding where the other person is coming from, having some empathy for the situation they find themselves in, if there were more of that, we'd be in better shape.
oh, it is so
So
beautiful that you say
I
that.
have many friends. I mean, I have a good friend who's estranged from his brother just
Mm,
because it's a political difference. Well, there's
yeah.
no reason for that. I mean, it's not necessary, but it's very widespread at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, our country is more divided and like the polarity is stronger than really ever before. There's been so many
Yep.
studies and experts that are communicating this, and we can see it in our friendships and communities all around us. And I love like the visual of a dining table, I imagine in the 60s, 70s,
Yeah. Yeah.
50s.
60s.
Yeah, with mom on one side, dad on the other side. And it's making me feel so good right now, Bill, because my husband and I just had a major argument with both of the boys present, and they're 20 and 22 now. And the ability for us to like back and forth, and the boys are weighing in just back and forth on this conversation. And I love knowing that though my husband and I may not agree all the time, the boys are listening and they're learning deep internal intuitive patterns of conflict resolution because we're
Absolutely true.
yeah,
You're watching carefully. Absolutely true.
yeah, that it's okay to disagree. Actually, that disagreement is important, that we should disagree because we need to all know what it's like to have disagreement, and when things don't happen in our life that we don't agree with, cancer, illness, job loss. There's going to be plenty of things that we disagree with in this world. And what will happen if I don't know how to manage that? Will it quit?
There's another point I'd like to make here that somehow it's important to be other directed in the sense of looking beyond yourself to a greater good or a more important issue. I mean,
Mm,
who would have thunk that there would be a political platform that would attract Bernie Sanders on one side and
mm,
Dick Cheney on the other?
mm.
Because they both think there's something more important
Mm,
than their political beliefs.
mm,
So looking for the greater good, the higher ground is I which is almost always the right thing, is I think
mm,
really an important dimension for leaders and
mm.
parents.
To be other directed, it feels like this brings in our spirituality theme, to be in service to others. John Mackey, the CEO, John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods,
Whole Foods.
he has, yeah, he has this win-win-win leadership. And so in leadership parenting, we have strategies that use identify your needs, identify your children's needs. And then once your needs are filled and your children's needs are filled, now both of you know what it's like when things aren't working out, and you know what strategies to use to help give you that agency in any space. Now you can go and work together to fill society's needs and to support each other. Empathy and collaboration. And like, yeah, that is what leadership is. And I love that you brought back this other directed theme. Like, you're called to, like, your ego has chilled out, and your ego isn't about me. Your ego is like gradually, gently harmonizing to serve the needs of others, which happens on a foundation of your own needs being like fulfilled first, and then being able to be, useful and make your mark and do the work you're here to do in this world. And
It's
so,
true. You have to have your own needs at least somewhat satisfied in order to feel appropriately other directed.
mm,
If you're at the bottom of Maslow's triangle, it's hard to get there, for example.
yes,
So
yes. Yes, exactly. And the child who's angry and just got in a fight with their friend on the playground, and the teacher says, "Say you're sorry, say you're sorry." It doesn't work. The kid may say they're sorry, but they're not really going to feel it. You got to listen. We have a beautiful hear process where you listen and empathize with their emotions first. And when you do that, naturally, then they start. I've had it so many times on the playground with my students where naturally, within 2 minutes of just hearing them, especially younger children, they're heard, their needs are pretty quick to be filled. And then they automatically, oh, yeah, well, I'm really sorry. Like, it comes naturally, and you don't even have to give them that instruction. But still, the goal being to be other directed, not that we fill our needs and that's it. But, and that example, Dick Cheney and Bernie Sanders, like together, working
who would
together.
have thunk? Yeah, to your point, I think it's in large measure a natural act.
Mm. Oh, interesting. It's a natural act. Like, it's not something that empathy is a part of our being. Mm. It's not something that needs to
So some people
naturally
have more than
arise.
others, but for sure, I think it's not foreign to many people. It's I think it's plugged into the DNA.
And so, if it's a naturally occurring item, those that don't exhibit it or don't feel it, it's just because their needs need to be met first. They need to take care of
Something
themselves
something
first.
like that. Yeah, there's some gap. Yep.
So, the promoters of the Bhakti path are Saints Gora and Nitai. And Gora is known as like the superlative being of empathy, like the source of all empathy, kindness. And there's so many stories of how they, even if they were hurt, Jesus Christ as well, like, even though he's being hurt, he's helping others, like the saints in general, Martin Luther King, who walked, and even though he was being attacked and being, like, his family members being violated, and still he was, in service and caring for the needs of others. So such a
Yep.
beautiful, yeah. Well,
Yep.
thank you. Are there any last comments that you'd like to share on this topic?
Yeah,
Empathy is a natural
there's
state.
one other thing that I've found useful over time,
Yes.
and it sort of fits in the category of being other directed in the case of teaching or coaching something.
Okay.
And that is, if someone who works for you reports to you
Mm,
uh, and has never done a given task, you want to give them that task and teach them over time to become competent at it,
mm,
then what you do changes over time, because what they need at the outset is plenty of structure and examples that do it this way so
mm,
that they can be successful.
mm,
And over time, pretty quickly, as they become successful, they'll begin to find ways to do it a little differently, make it
mm,
their own, find their own way, make their own changes. And
mm,
that's the point where, you're coaching and you're correcting and saying, this worked, this didn't, here's
mm,
why, try it this way, nice job, keep going.
mm,
Eventually becomes an ultimate delegation. You don't need to tell them anymore. They know they've proven,
mm,
the proof points are there. They've proven they
mm.
know how to do something.
Yeah.
The same is true of children.
Yes.
The way you teach children is to give them a structure to start, to show them how to do it so that they can follow a model or follow an example or copy something. And
Yeah.
over time, they learn to do it themselves, their own way. They put their own thumbprints on it and they make it their own.
Yes. I'm remembering as you're saying this, you told me that you were a teacher at some point.
Guilty as charged.
Yes, that's right. It's just hit me. You were a sixth grade teacher?
Actually, high school,
High school.
10 years
Okay.
in high school. I taught elective courses in psych and soc and philosophy in high school.
Yeah, and that was where again?
Kents Hill School in Augusta, Maine.
In Maine. Beautiful. Yeah, I remember that because you have so much experience in these connections. And you had mentioned that you were a teacher, and then you had mentioned something about the step from guiding children and students into leadership and guiding adults is like a natural, like there are so many natural themes there because you learn about like from children and even teenagers, you really learn about basic human needs, which are everywhere, whether you're 60 or you're 90 or you're 9, the needs are the same. So,
One of the things that was very appropriate developmentally for me in that job
mm,
was there was no way for students in that particular high school to learn anything about careers and what different careers were possible and what was involved in getting prepared and credentialed and so on and so forth. So
mm,
me and another guy started a career education program, which, and that opened my eyes to all kinds of careers that never occurred to me.
yeah.
But that was a very good experience. So sometimes the act of teaching something or learning to teach something
Mm.
is very developmentally appropriate.
And that's literally what you do now. Like you're a career, like you help people in their career transitions
Yeah.
in a way. I mean, just from this conversation, I'm
Well,
sure there's a long list of what you do.
yeah. Plus, which
One of the
I'm
things.
always learning. I've done this a long time, and I'd
Yeah.
like to think I've already made and learned from most of the mistakes, but
Yes, yes.
there's more to learn.
Yeah, human nature is so variegated. It's so full that
Yep.
it's actually so full and at the same time so incomplete. We're constantly filling it.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bill. I
Thank you. It's
think,
been great. Enjoyed
yeah,
it.
we'll end with another recitation of the mantra. Thank you to our listeners. I'm going to take a deep breath and recite some of our affirmations here with Bill. I am connected to serving others' needs. I am determined to finding my natural empathy. I am exhilarated about connecting deeply to Source. Krishna, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, hey. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely.